Hello everyone, and welcome back to Carpo's channel, my channel, the channel. I guess it's not my channel, it's just a digital space where I can put information and people are able to consume it with their eyeballs and their ears. And it is a very strange thing when you think about it. I consider back in the day when I had when I was a skater, I used to love skateboarding. And once in a while some kid would show up with a camcorder, like a VHS camcorder. And this is right around before the time when high eights became available. But anyhow, it was, I'd always see those camcorders and think, man, I'd love to be able to have that to record my days skating. But never got one, and it's just weird to be in a time where we can. And but also in such a strange time where everything is digitized, where anyone can speak out. Back when I was a kid, you had to have some clout to talk to the world. You had to be able to get on a radio station. Some people would pirate radio stations. That was a big thing. If you could get on a pirated station to share your thoughts with a bunch of people, that was, pretty cool for people. The best way you could reach people was flyers. So anyhow, that's not really relevant to the discussion other than to say that in today's world, everybody's an expert. Everybody can say anything they want. Every band, every musician, anybody who ever wanted to share anything, they can just post it. Just like I did the other day with my Omicron song. And actually, I guess that would be a great segue into the discussion I want to have here. The Omicron song, it actually, I found it pretty funny. It got stuck in my head. I just wrote it in like an hour. And I was like, all right, I just want to write a song to kind of joke around about this new variant that came out, that all of a sudden, 12 variants and they discovered this one in South Africa. And by the way, they have really good laboratories down there in South Africa because of the fact that they have so many different viruses like Ebola, West Nile. They've got a whole bunch of problems down there. And they've always had good laboratories to study things. Regardless of all the different issues with COVID over the last couple of years, the laboratories discovered it first there. And so therefore, what do? An instant panic in the media. Everybody's going to lock down borders and lock down flights. People are unable to get to work, unable to get to their trips, their destinations, A complete shutdown over a variant that, as we know, most viruses weaken over time. So most likely it's very much less virulent. But what fascinated me was that they said that there were only a few cases, and all of this panic ensued. And it reminded me of how little we've learned during this pandemic. I mean, I still know plenty of people who just follow protocol, whatever they're told to do. Don't question it. Don't ask any questions. Look for any evidence or any science behind why we're doing what we're doing. And because of this, there's a continual fear, which has been perpetuated. Now, I'll admit, the first few months, I was a little fearful. I didn't know what was going on. I saw that they were locking down in China, and I was like, oh shit, this must be serious. I would spray down my groceries, wear my masks, do everything I was supposed to do, not just because I was supposed to do it, but because I didn't know how dangerous this was. I didn't know if it was a 5 or 10%, death rate. I had no idea. None of us did. Then a month went by. Then 6 months. And then a year. And now it's been almost 2 years. And we have learned so much more about this. Yet we haven't updated our rationality with what we've discovered. The fact that this virus is going to run rampant, that it will not stop, and that it will continue to mutate, and we are living in an endemic state right now. I honestly didn't believe that the collective human race were so easily swayed into limiting their own freedoms for something that probably isn't even harmful to them. We've learned that the elderly are most at risk. We've learned that younger people fare much better. In fact, the chance of a death from a kid or a teenager is 1,000 times less than somebody who's over 75. That's very significant. They don't even talk about these things. And like I said, genetic sequencing, the way that we are finding all these different variants, it leads leads one to wonder how we can know so much about something after it was discovered like a week ago, right? So the Omicron, and the reason I wrote that song was because it was the straw that broke the camel's back. Like, I'm already frustrated with all this bullshit. What's happening in Australia, if you haven't seen, they have internment camps. If you're even near somebody who got sick, you have to get sent into these camps for 14 days, even if you test negative. And there was an interview I watched on, it's a pretty good YouTube channel called Unheard. Unheard as in a herd of cattle. So it's Unherd. No, it's not some right-wing conservative channel. The guy is really balanced. I don't recall the guy's name, but he interviewed this girl from Australia who got sent there. And when she called the CDC to say why was she sent there but not others, they said, oh, it's because she lied and said she'd already had a test. And they're playing kind of a control game. And a majority of people, like you can see what's happening over in, or right now over in Europe, people are more than willing to comply and consider everybody else to be the problem. You know, when this first started, we didn't know what to think. We had the promise of a vaccine. It came. We were told it was 95% or more effective. Even though Delta came out, they never altered the formula. They just continued with the same original vax. And then, all of a sudden, Omicron comes out, and they say, we are reformulating them, and they'll be ready within 3 months. And it makes me not just ask the question of why are they doing that now, but the question of why don't people realize that you never let a good crisis go to waste. A lot of us don't deny this is a real crisis for a lot of people. But we do see how continually promoting the fear is nonsense. I've been going to concerts, doing my normal thing. And, you know, like I said, a group of people in my group of people we were hanging out with at a concert, they all got COVID. We didn't. It is what it is. I don't know if I have antibodies or not. Perhaps I already had it. I just don't know. I have a good immune system, but, you know, the thing is, we're so disorganized after 2 full years that people have just given up giving a shit. And maybe that's a good thing. Because maybe it is time that we just go back to life. You know how much has been lost during this pandemic? Overdoses were over 100,000 in the last year. That's up almost 2-fold from prior years. People are depressed, they're anxious, they're upset. My kids, I have a 9 and a 12-year-old, and they both go to school, a 3rd and a 7th grader. And let me just say that wearing masks all day long at school can be very difficult for a kid. Not just because you can't see the teachers and they can't see you, but because they've missed an entire year of school. You know, unless you're a parent, you just don't understand this. But my kids missed a fucking year of school. And when they finally went back, they're forced to wear masks and distance certain rules, don't talk to people in class, things like that. It is so absurd because they need to make friends. My kid just went into middle school. This is his first year. He missed his first year in middle school, and now he has to go in as a 7th grader, not know anybody, and try to make friends through, you know, these trying times when kids are not even spreaders, when kids are not even likely to get sick. I believe less than 100 kids, last time I checked, was 94 kids. 94 died from COVID during the entire pandemic in the U.S. Some people said it was 300 and something. The belief, from what I read in the Science Journal, was that a majority of them had pre-existing conditions, which is something you would expect. Now, if you have pre-existing conditions, you need to protect yourself, because we're at that point right now. We can't just shut down society to protect a few elderly or a few, you know, people who have conditions where they can't get vaccinated. It is absurd. I'm not opposed to medicine. I'm not opposed to the technology that has saved so many lives. And it sucks being pushed into that group and being labeled because we want to be tribal. We've found tribalism in health now instead of in politics. Oh, Trump's out of office. Let's find some other demon, you know. And I feel that there's so much depression and anxiety out there that it's much easier to just call everyone else a moron or selfish or a conspiracy theorist, rather than admit that people should be able to make their own choices, and that so many of these medical journals that are ignored when they post an article saying, well, maybe this isn't as bad as we thought, or maybe this, isn't as bad as we thought. And it doesn't matter, because the narrative is being pushed by the media so strong now that even hippie liberals like myself have to talk about this shit. I'm not a conservative. I'm not a right-winger. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I get sick of all that shit. But what I do see is right in front of my face, the control factor, something I've read about for a long time. I'm well aware of how many books, how many stories, how many archetypes, allegories, and mythological, stories have taught us about this factor. You do not let your society be controlled by fear. Ever. Fear is the worst thing that you can use to, well, it's the best thing you can use to control the people, but it's the worst thing that you can fall victim to. I have not an ounce of fear in my heart about any of this shit now. There was a time at the beginning where I was a little sketched. Now, not at all. I'm convinced I'll get COVID or I've had COVID. It is what it is at this point. It doesn't matter if you have a shot or not. It doesn't matter how well you protect yourself. We're living in a day where everything is interconnected. And like I said, when I went to a concert, the only people out of my group who got sick were the ones who had been vaxxed. And I'm not going to let that color my view of truth. I'm not going to say, oh, that's a scientific study, because it's not. What it showed to me was that nobody's safe. Nobody's safe. But I don't know anybody in the last 2 years at all who's died from COVID, personally. Anyone. I've known through the grapevine of a couple other people, but, out of my large family and friend group, I don't know anyone who knows anyone who's died from COVID. Even one of somebody in our extended family who had a serious problem with drug addiction in the past, had a lot of health issues, got COVID and recovered, and if you look at states like Florida versus California, it's become a political battle. This landscape of, oh, look at DeSantis versus whoever the guy, I can't remember the California guy. I hate thinking of politicians as the scapegoats, because they're not. They're idiots. Both of them. I don't like DeSantis because he's playing his game for politics, just like the guy in California is playing his game. I despise them both. I don't want it to become a political issue of left and right, because that's where it goes wrong. There is no left and right. Like I was saying to somebody, we used to have so many different political parties and different ideals in this country. And now all of a sudden you have to pick a side. Fuck that. I will not pick a side. I refuse, But if you look at Florida versus California, Florida, a state that just said, we don't care about masks as much or any of that shit. California, who basically you'll be arrested and pinned to the ground if you go to the beach without a mask on. I mean, I've seen how this has made people behave. Wearing a mask at the beach? I mean, what happened to people? When did people stop thinking for themselves? This whole time, when I go into a crowded space, I'll wear a mask. It might not even be doing that much of a good. Maybe it just protects others. Maybe it does nothing. But whatever, I'm in and out. But outside, walking down the street, riding a bike, or like I saw the other day, a guy swimming in a pool wearing a mask, what the fuck is going on out there? But if you look at Florida versus Cali, the death rates aren't much different. And Florida has a huge elderly population, so people will point to that as the reason. But if you account for the per capita elderly population versus California, it's the same. Masks aren't helping very much. And it seems now that we're all stuck fighting about this, and we can't even talk about it. I'm not even going to go into the censorship issues. I'm just kind of getting this off my chest because, yeah, it bothers me. It bothers me not that the government or that any other agency is doing what they do, making money, but that my neighbors, my friends, my family, people I know, believe the shit and refuse to look deeper. Fear as a tactic is working, and it is working really well. And playing the greater good fallacy only works when we have something that's extremely deadly. The idea that we need to just sacrifice our freedoms to protect the vulnerable, it doesn't work because we've shown it doesn't stop spread. We aren't getting the results we'd hoped we'd got. And there's one thing you will never hear a politician, a doctor, or a scientist say, is that I don't know. Mind you, there are some who will, but a lot more refuse to ever admit that they don't know something. Because of this, we are stuck believing what others are telling us. And for me, I would rather choose for myself. My choice is to just basically, more or less, just ignore the situation until it gets pushed in my face. So when I talk about this, it's because it's being pushed in my face. Others, whether it be people, the way that people are treating others as pariahs, or the way that in my own life, as long as there aren't mandates for me or my kids, I'm fine. But once that becomes an issue in my state, then I'm going to have to speak up. And it doesn't seem like it's too far away. Like I said, if you look at what's happening in Australia, it's pretty sad. People being sent to an internment camp for 14 days, even though they test negative. That is really extreme, considering what's going on, and it makes you wonder. It really makes you wonder. I don't know what about, but at any rate, fuck Omicron. If you haven't heard my Omicron song, check it out. It's on the channel. And assuming this video doesn't get censored or deleted by YouTube, because they don't seem to really give a shit if you don't have the mainstream opinion, you just get your video deleted. Hopefully I didn't cross any lines here, because this is just my opinion, how I feel. I'm not opposed to any particular medicines. I'm not opposed to people's choices. But I am opposed to any type of forcive coercion for anything in a country that prides itself on freedom. That's just how I feel. I'm out. Latro.